First up is Fire Department, Chief Roy. Dick. We should have done it lazy. Councilors, we'll start off with the Fire Department. Total personal services, $3,560,358. Total benefits and stipends, $1,349,747. Total fire prevention, $113,198. Total office and supplies, $24,000. Total vehicle and equipment, $204,108. Total building maintenance, $180,000, for a total fire budget of $5,431,411. Councilor Conry.
A personal services increase of 2% and total benefits and stipends of 4%. The question is, has the contract negotiations concluded and has the contract been approved?
We have come to an agreement with the union. We have not signed the agreement yet. I believe the union may be voting on it tonight. They've been running a vote the last few days.
Thank you. And Councilor Hay, to the mayor. Mayor, once this has been ratified, would you send a copy of the contract to all the councilors, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you, Chief. On your overtime account, its budget this year was $250, and it's going up by $90,000 next year, and it's the highest appropriation since 2008, since 2009. Your firefighter account is roughly $460,000 more this year than last, and I think we know why for that, the grants, but what is the explanation for the overtime going up by $90,000 in 1 year? What's going on there?
The overtime that I've got right now is $170, Councilor, which isn't enough. Yeah, it's half of what I spent.
I'm sorry. Let me look at the page here.
Page 35, Councilor.
Oh, I was looking at the wrong column. Withdraw my question.
Councilor Salamito.
Gladly take that
I'm
increase.
sorry, Councilor Di Natale, do you have more questions?
Oh, well, I just have a quick comment. Since this is the start of the budgets, I just wanted to thank the finance team and the mayor for presenting us with a budget that has signatures on it, that department heads have acknowledged it, they've signed it. That was missing last year. One area of concern is I'm very skeptical of that FY11 projected column. And one little example is, earlier this evening, Chief Roy was telling us how his office supply account was about $8,000 in the black because of funds being accompanied for it in another section of the budget. Yet, this projection says office supplies is $15,000. I have a problem with this, and this is just one little example. It's all over the budget. I'm looking at these FY11 projections, and that's one example. It says, this is saying your projected spend is going to be $15,000 in office supplies, and that is not true.
For this current year, Councilor?
For the current year. I'm not talking about what you have for 12. I'm talking about the information the council has. Got to be aware here, $8,500 is what you're going to spend this year in 11 on office supplies. This projected spend says 15.
Correct.
And you've known that for quite some time. So already, I'm questioning these numbers.
Council, I can just explain that, and I agree with you, but when we balance at the end, we usually balance the bucket, and, you know, we do have additional, we're already in the hole for travel and meetings, we're in the hole in some other accounts, and I agree with you, and that's why this year I changed in the budget. I've cut the office supplies down to $10,000 and made the proper adjustments. You're right, the $15,000 wasn't true, but it was spent in that bucket every year. We didn't have any money left in that total
Right, but
bucket.
not in FY11, though.
In FY11, we're going to spend, we're going to need it in the household. In other words, it's transferred within my budget. I agree with you.
I follow you, Chief.
Yep, no, I
mean,
get you.
I guess I'm a literalist.
Yeah, no, I get
This
it.
says 15 grand is going to be spent in office supplies, and that's not the case.
Correct.
And this is all over the budget.
Right, but
I s-
by other accounts that should have been put into originally to be in the beginning of the year, we're underfunded. So you're right, though. In that bucket, I'm not going to spend that money.
Yes, Councilman.
This is the very first time that we're meeting for the budget, and I would like to make a request that we don't call things true, because the opposite of true is a lie. Perhaps an inaccuracy, inaccurate, a miscalculation, but I would like to avoid saying that heads of departments are not telling the truth, and I believe that I'm on good standing for proper protocol amongst all of us. So,
I'm not quite sure, Counselor. Are you asking for other counselors to speak in a different manner?
I'm making a point right from the get-go that adamant declarations of something being untrue as opposed to inaccurate or pointing out where the inaccuracy is sets a tone of fighting amongst us and opposition, and I think we're trying to work together. So I would rather hear...
I don't disagree with you, Counselor, and you're entitled to your opinion, and you're entitled to speak the way you choose to, and wish
Well,
to
this is
with
protocol.
counsel.
If you go to the book, they say that you're not to do that.
I don't think saying that you
It
think something...
cast a character assassination.
I disagree with you. I think that people have the ability to say what they believe to be the truth or not the truth.
I'll show you in the books, okay?
Counsel Di Natale.
Mr. President, first of all, I did not call the department head a liar, and I didn't say he wasn't telling the truth. This isn't his budget. This is the mayor's budget. And I didn't call the mayor a liar. I'm simply looking at the data that I have in front of me, and it says on the packet they're going to spend 15 grand in office supplies, not in household. So that is not true. Whether it's inaccurate or not true, it's the same thing in my opinion. I'm not calling anybody a liar. I'm saying this is not accurate. You want me to say the accurate? I'll say accurate. It's not accurate. And it's like this all over the place. It's not just the fire department budget. I hate to nitpick, but councilors are depending on these numbers to make decisions on cuts or whatever. This is not what's going to happen. There are other accounts in these budgets that say, we're going to spend 15 grand this year on this item, and they've only spent like 2 with 5 weeks to go. It makes the appearance that the number is being inflated to justify next year's appropriation. And if that's the case, that it's being moved somewhere else, that should be identified in this projected number, if that's the case. Maybe not so for things that are happening now, because this is after the fact, but I did not call the department head a liar, and I never would. My last question on the budget, Chief, is you have, in here, you have the incentives. Is that for, what are the what's the incentives line?
The incentives is all educational payments, stipends, all the different payments that are involved in the contract.
And you haven't had a FEMA director since 2008?
Correct, when Deputy Spano retired. We have a FEMA director, it's Deputy Chief Curran, he does that as additional duties to his shift commander duties. Deputy Chief Kevin Curran.
Okay, thank you.
Counsel, could I just, one comment on council to clarify. I did move the $5,000 out of office supplies earlier tonight, and if you look down on the household, that's where the $5,000 went for next year's budget.
Got it, thank you.
Counsel Salamito.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chief, looking at the projected increase in pay for the chief, the deputies, the captain, lieutenants in the fire alarm, and the firefighters, and it looks like a 2% pay raise. And I'm going to ask, maybe I should ask the mayor through you, Mr. President, is that reflective of an anticipated contract agreement of this year?
Correct.
So if we approve the budget, then we're, in effect, saying yes to the contract.
Potentially, though, during this budget season, you will see the contract before you for your approval as well.
But if the council votes no on the contract and yes on the budget, we've allotted a whole lot of money to the fire department that they're not going to get because the contract hasn't been approved. My fear,
Yes
Madam
and- yes
Mayor,
and
is
no.
that we're almost being pushed into accepting the contract because we've already approved the money.
Not true. You have the ability to reduce any amount in this budget. So it is in your hands right now. If you wanted to reduce it beyond the contract, then I would just have to go and either renegotiate or lay off. You have the ability to reduce this up to this amount. We could also approve a contract now, and I could renegotiate in 6 months less than this. This only gives me the maximum amount that I'm allowed to spend.
But if the contract is not approved, what I just feel as though you're pressuring, or there's an assumption the council is going to approve the contract. And I'm not saying they're not, but you've built in the cost of the contract anticipating it's going to get passed. And isn't it really putting the cart before the horse?
No, because you have every right and ability to reduce the budget as you see fit. So it is in your power and your hands to do that. I am not pressuring you. In fact, I've even suggested that you may cut it more than the contracted amount, and I would just have to deal with the consequences. So you are allowed to do that. It's in your hands right now for your discussion if you want to do that. I would recommend that you not do that. I don't feel like I'm pressuring you when I say that, because I believe that it is a good contract that we have signed with the fire department. I support it. Otherwise, I would not have negotiated it and had it go before them for their vote. And then I will be bringing it forward to you for your review. But you have many, many weeks ahead to do as you wish with the fire department budget.
Thank you. Then, as a result, and believe me, this is not anticipating a no vote, but I would ask the members of the council to consider not approving the amounts of where reflected the 2% increase until we act upon the contract for vote. If we vote yes at a later date, the mayor has every right to bring in a supplemental budget, which I would not be opposed to. But I am opposed to putting in the money into a budget for a contract that we haven't even looked at yet, never mind having approved. And that's not a reflection of the fire department. That's, I think we're putting the cart before the horse. My next question, Chief, is the overtime budget. In fiscal year 2009, fiscal year 2010, and fiscal year 2011, the overtime budget has been roughly $300,000, now up to $340,000, correct? And now it's projected that it's going to go down 50% to $170,000. Is that correct?
That's correct.
How are you able to reduce your overtime by 50%?
Couple of things, Counselor. There was, when you see the $340,000 for this fiscal year, we were fortunate enough to get $95,000 out of the stimulus grant, which was one of our grants that we had from the Executive Office of Public Safety last year. We had originally about $70,000 in overtime to spend in this fiscal year. We didn't use as much for the salaries of the 8 firefighters due to the cuts we had made in new firefighter salaries. So we were able to transfer the rest of the salary money into overtime. So in fact, as of today, we've only spent about $265,000 in overtime this fiscal year. So we are not going to spend, that's projected $340,000, that's the $250,000 from the city and $95,000 or whatever the difference is from the EOPS. So, and you're right, I don't project that I'll be able to do it with 170. I've had some discussions with the mayor. We need a minimum of at least $200,000 overtime for next fiscal year to maintain all our equipment in our stations. But it's not as bad as it looks here. I believe there's going to be a surplus in the overtime account, is what I'm saying.
So it may not be 340, but 170 isn't realistic either, is
It isn't. It is not.
And that isn't taking into consideration the overtime you're going to be paying firefighters and officers who might get a 2% pay raise, because the overtime is built into the current overtime rate.
Correct.
Or the current pay scale.
Right.
But if the contract increases go up, then the amount of overtime that you think is going to be at least $200,000 based on the old scale
Right.
will probably go even higher than that.
It'll go a little higher. It'll go over 2% of that, so it's not a huge
So-
number.
What I'm just suggesting to the members is that this isn't a realistic amount, and that's not to you, but if we put in $200,000 rather than 170, and put that into the total budget to see if it's a balanced budget at the end. That's what I'm saying. It's very easy to say, I'll spend only 170, and then near the end of the year, say, well, that wasn't realistic, it really wasn't a balanced budget, and I'm going to have to spend more money. I think we should know up front that's not a realistic figure.
Yeah, just to update, Council, I had originally put in for 250,000. When the mayor gave me the 4 safer firefighters, I thought that's going to reduce our overtime somewhat with the new people. Keep them in mind, they still have to go to the fire academy for 12 weeks each. So I thought the 220,000 was a more realistic figure, and I've had a number of discussions with the mayor on that issue.
All
So
right.
she's aware of it.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Counselor Joseph.
Looking at your staffing levels that you have for different ranks, there doesn't seem to be any change in the ranks. Are you anticipating any promotions? Or is this if we say that we're going to have 4 deputies, 4 captains, 12 lieutenants, are those the numbers that we anticipate staffing to those levels all year?
Yes, Council, this budget has the same number of staffing as the current budget. There's no change, there's no increase. We are going to get a new captain and 2 new lieutenants, but those jobs were being filled temporarily until the exam marks came back. So, yes, those are the jobs that are filled now and will be filled next year. This budget matches what we currently have today, 76 overall personnel.
But are they 4 deputies, 4 captains,
correct.
12 lieutenants?
That's correct.
Okay. And do you have the total cost of the anticipated contract?
It's roughly $98,000.
Thank you.
That's for everything.
Counselor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, understanding that you had someone in the FEMA position before and someone still doing that job today. Do other cities and towns have FEMA directors?
Absolutely. City of Leominster has a FEMA director and an assistant FEMA director and a full, I think it's a $500,000, $600,000 budget.
Are they paid from the federal government?
No, paid by the cities, most cases. Most cities our size have at least a part-time or a full-time FEMA director.
Back when you last funded it, which was fiscal year '08, it
Yes.
was funded at $79,000 plus. Do you know, before then, was it funded at '07, '06?
Yes.
How long was that position funded?
It came into it's been funded forever. It was funded back in the 70s. Ray Stone, a former councilor, he was a civilian FEMA director, and then the fire department took it over probably, I want to guess, in 1990, 91. Deputy Chief Buck took it over, and then that was our 5th deputy, but that position's been eliminated since 2008. The 5th deputy's position was eliminated.
So that is one position that is gone and is not federally funded, even though a FEMA director sounds like it should be federally funded.
Yeah, we get some grant, like we just got the $17,000 grant that was just here on, that you can use for FEMA projects, but you cannot use it for salaries. We can apply some of his salary to the time he spends on city time as a match to the grant, which helps us. But we do not get FEMA money to pay anybody.
Is that what we do?
Yeah, we're doing it this year with that $17,000 grant. We had to match that, so we're matching it with the number of hours that Deputy Curran spends on FEMA time. So at least it's a match. We get something out of it.
Thank you, Chief.
Any other questions for Chief Roy? Counselor Conry.
Not a question, but it's just an observation. Chief Roy is a professional firefighter, has been for years. And I cannot understand when he makes a request on his overtime, taking a look at what it cost the city last year, that it can't at least be level funded. I mean, he has admitted himself that he cannot get by on $170,000. So, is his budget realistic? It's not. Not if he says he can't get by on $170,000. It's just an observation and a comment. And I think we have to stand by the chief on this issue. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments for the chief? Thank you, Chief Roy.
Thank you, councilors.
Next, we'll have Human Resources, page 16. Thank you, Mr. Stevens.
No overtime. Count.
Human Resources, Personal Services, Human Resource Director, $75,638. Longevity, $689. Human Resources expenses, $3,000. Total Human Resources, $79,327. Mr. Stevens? Questions for Mr. Stevens?
I just want to thank the council and you, Mr. President, for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And I've told the truth.
Next will be the Law Department, page 17.
Good evening, councilors.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Mr. President, councilors.
Law Department, Legal Personal Services, City Solicitor, $91,000, Assistant City Solicitor, $60,000, total $151,000. Legal Labor in Mediation, total of $107,000. Legal Expenses, $9,700, total legal $267,700. Counselor Joseph.
I know that looks like a really good number, and if it was more than that number, we'd probably cut it down to that number, but is that number realistic? We got every year, I mean, right now, we still have a lot of unions that haven't reached their final contract. Do you think that the outside labor supplement going down to $70,000 is realistic?
It's hard to project. Some of these figures are hard to project because it depends on circumstances. I think it's realistic, but depending on what happens, what kind of litigation occurs, if there's an unfair labor practice filed, or if the negotiations become protracted, it could change. It's one of those things you don't know. It's sort of like judgment awards or damages to personal property. It depends on what happens during the year in terms of insurance deductibles, lawsuits, filing fees, that kind of thing. But I think it's a doable figure, and I think it's where we started off last year. We've accomplished a lot in the negotiations to date.
Thank you.
Counselor Di Natale.
This is the order under legal costs and expenses. It says on this line item that the FY11 projected number is $6,500. Status E report through May 20th says that we've only spent $264 in that account. Are we getting a bill for $6,000 in the last 5 weeks?
I don't think so. I think there are some projected costs that we have several real estate transactions which will incur costs for recording fees. We have several pieces of litigation that may have to be addressed. It's hard to know.
2010, we spent $500 in that account. 2009, we spent $1,100 in that account.
Right.
And this includes encumbrances. 2007, we spent nothing. This year, we're going to propose $5,000. And I made a mistake. It's actually that the actual number right now is $1,700.
Right. I think there's another 18.
Well, yeah, Counselor, I thought that the expenses that we had submitted had come to 30, I thought it was about 30, actually 4,800. It's kind of difficult because that whole category is somewhat fluid in terms of sometimes you might have greater expenses with respect to travel and meetings, and sometimes you might have more in terms of legal costs and expenses. So, but I think, if I'm reading this year-to-date budget report correctly, under legal costs and expenses, we'd spent year-to-date as of March 30th, $3,340. So,
Status E report through May 20th, $1,743 spent in legal costs and expenses through last Friday.
I don't know.
I'm looking at it right here.
Well.
And I hear what you're saying, but again, this is what happens every year with me
Yeah.
and every department. Every year, they're given way more than they use consistently. And when I ask the question, department heads will say, well, we got a lot of bills that are coming up in the last 5 weeks of the year. We didn't use it for the other 47, but we need it for the last 5. And then I get the year-end report with the encumbrances, and they didn't use it. Case in point, last year, I remember asking about filing fees. We had $1,000 in the filing fees, and I know it's small dollars, but I was told then that we were going to use that $1,000, even though nothing was used at that point. We didn't end up using it. I made a point of using the encumbrances. I know everybody always uses that term. I have all those numbers. We didn't use it, but we said we were going to. I believe $5,000 is excessive, given the history of this account. I would like to make a recommendation that account be cut by $3,000.
To $2,000?
Yes.
So noted.
May I address that?
Certainly.
Part of the problem is, Counselor, you have no idea. It is extremely difficult to anticipate, for example, take a look at the figures in judgment award for this year and the year before. There was no way of anticipating that those amounts would be incurred then. You do not know how many lawsuits they will need to be filed. We tend to file them as many as we can in the housing court because there's no filing fee. But a Superior Court case, the filing fee's in the hundreds of dollars, several $100s. So if there are a bunch of those, zoning appeals, land court cases, and there's no way of projecting what people are going to do legally to the city or how the city will need legally to react. So if it's cut, at some point we would have to come back and say, if the unanticipated occurs, we need the money because we've spent the filing fee. So it's not exactly an exorbitant figure, and it's a decent projection for the possibility.
Mr. Sealer, I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you to an extent. You know, to me, budgeting is a matter of what do you need versus what do you like to have, okay? And for me, what do you need to get by is what you've been using, and you haven't been using $5,000. I understand that there are uncertainties in budgeting practices, I understand that, but I'm looking at a 6-year period. We've never come close to even half that number, and we're giving you $5,000. I know you may need it. I would like to add a little more transparency. Every year I've asked for this. If the mayor wishes to do this, for all I care, she can take that $3,000 and put it into other municipal reserve uses, a reserve account. If you need it in the future, you can come back and ask for it, but I'd like to have you come back and ask for it if you truly needed it, instead of putting it in here and then having it become free cash in the following year. It's a matter of transparency for me. My opinion is I don't believe this is going to be used, based on the last 6 years of data. If you need it, you can come back and ask for it, and that's what the reserve account is for. So if there are counselors who are concerned about money being cut from departments and spent, I'm all for putting it in reserve. Don't spend it on anything, just keep it there. And I've always had the mentality that it's not the department head's money, it's the taxpayers' money, so I don't feel like this should be a slight to anybody. I'm not blaming you for not using the money. I'm simply saying, because there's been so many underruns, my contention is you never needed the money to begin with. So, I'm nitpicky, I know. I'm going by account, but I'm sorry. I'm going to do this with everybody. And my recommendation stands, and that's it.
Counselor Conry.
Through you to Mr. Ciota, do we have any pending judgment cases right now?
Not in the, well, we have some cases where we are exposed to having to pay money. Some of them were discussed in executive session,
Correct.
and there are several others that are pending that could, one in particular, that could result in a judgment award. And another one pending in civil service, which could require us to appeal, depending on the results of that, because of the particular commissioner we have.
As a result of the possibility of these judgment awards that we know are on the table, why is it that in the FY12 budget, we have not budgeted anything?
Because if they haven't occurred, we would have to come back, as we did with the $113,000 amount and the $300,000 amount. We came back to the council and apprised the council of what the situation was and why the appropriation was needed. You can't, if Councilor Di Natale's point about the $3,000 is magnified enormously if you were to put in $300,000 for judgment award. It could happen. I mean, you know what I'm referring to, which cases it could, that kind of, not that amount, but where money we could be exposed, but we don't know. And if that occurs, we come back to the council, and as we learn more, we apprise the council of the possibility or probability of those outcomes.
Even though it's an unknown, do you feel that you should have some money in that account?
I think that's up to the mayor and council. Put it this way, if we do have a money judgment or an obligation to pay money, the judicial system, both the United States and the state, will see to it that we do. There was a case, well, I don't want to go into it, but the Supreme Judicial Court of this state has said that we will pay, a municipality will pay, and we'll make sure that they do. So it's going to happen. If that's going to happen, we're going to have to pay the judgment, and we would just have to come back to you.
Is there some type of an insurance or bonding that the city has that...
Well, we have our insurance to cover many things. It does not cover everything.
Okay, fine, thank you.
If I can maybe just add one thing in reply to your question,
Yes.
Counselor. I know this year we were fortunate with respect to deductibles. There are some insurance deductibles that we have to pay, and I think we've been pretty good this year. Last year, we had a lot of them that we had to absorb, and I think that's part of where that money was so high last year. I don't believe we've gotten anything yet this year, but it's possible that we could get something. They usually do it on a quarterly basis, so if we get it, it's going to come in like towards the end of June, I believe. But I think we're in good shape with that.
I think we are this year, too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Council Solomito.
Thank you, Mr. President. Michael, the issue that you and Councilor Connery were talking about, and definitely not get into specific, are we still employing outside counsel for that issue?
Yes, for both of the ones that you're thinking of.
Is it anticipated that it can go for an extended period of time?
It's going to go on a little bit longer.
We haven't got a resolution yet.
There is no resolution. In the one situation, we're moving to resolution. In the other, we haven't taken the steps back, but the steps have been taken back.
My question is, and
Rather
definitely...
discuss that in executive session.
Right, and definitely know that issue. Michael, what I'm really getting to is the outside legal fee going from 110 to 70. Is it a realistic reduction? And so that's why I asked the question, if you anticipate that issue continuing, is it a realistic projection that all outside attorney fee will fit within the 70,000?
If my recollection is correct, we've had to come back to the council each of the previous years to ask for a supplemental on that account.
Thank you. And members of the council, again, I'm going to bring up the issue. The attorney said that each and every time he's had to come back for supplemental money. So when they put down in the mayor's budget to go from 110 to 70, saving the city $40,000, it's really not realistic. Sounds good, sounds wonderful, but by the attorney's own admission, comes back every year that he's going to have to come back for supplemental budget. Then he went back to the fire department budget, where it was stated, and it looked good, that overtime would be 170, and the chief, by his own admission, said that 220 may be a realistic figure. So if you take the $220,000 that the chief of the fire department said was realistic, they're not going to save $170,000 as projected, they'll save 120. And if you go by the law department, it's projected that they're going to save 70, and now we hear that that's probably, that they're going to save 40, and now we hear from the attorney that that's not realistic. Are we really saving $230,000 if you look at two budgets? We've only had two departments, and we find so far that the promised or anticipated savings isn't even realistic. And if that's what every department's going to be from here on in, I'm just going to ask the members to pay attention, because is it a balanced budget, or does it look good? Thank you. But that's not a question for you, that's just...
Well, I could respond to that. One of the things I've tried to do with the outside legal counsel is I've taken over whole portions of what used to be done by Labor Counsel. Almost, well, actually, all the civil service cases, which are time-consuming cases. And many of the other employment issues are addressed between me and Mr. Stevens, so they don't ever get to Peter. And the idea for that is to assume as much as I can to reduce those costs that we have to pay for outside legal counsel for labor. And we have a similar arrangement with outside legal counsel for the other matter.
So are you telling us you don't anticipate coming back?
I
Maybe
can't
you
say
do.
that.
But-
I can tell you that I work to reduce it by assuming some of those burdens.
I thank you. But if you come back for $5,000, that's realistic. If you come back for $25,000, personally, I would find that wasn't a realistic projection. It just sounded good. And that's not to you. But if you come back looking for 5, understandable. If you come back looking for 25, it should have been put in the budget that outside counsel would cost 100 as compared to 70. That's all. Thank you.
If I might, Mr. President, through you to the counselor, I think, as Mike indicated before, it is difficult to predict. You know, if you get a lot of labor issues, you get protracted negotiations, it can get more. And I think that the number here is, as Michael said, a realistic, you sort of hope for the best, and hope something bad doesn't happen,
Thank you.
All set, Counsel Solomito?
Thank you.
Mike, if I can just ask a question. At a recent city council meeting, you indicated that you were anticipating that you would be retiring come January.
Yes.
Yet we have $91,000 in the budget. Is that anticipating that the person who replaces you will be at the same rate? I guess maybe, should I ask that to the mayor?
That has yet to be determined, but I do know that wherever that is in the dollar amount, whether it's outside counsel or an in-house counsel or a combination of both, we will need at least that amount. And I think that really reflects the fact that we've been getting so much value from our in-house counsel right now.
I don't deny that at all. I'm concerned when you say that we'll need at least that amount. Does that mean that this budget is underfunded?
It could potentially be. It could potentially be overfunded. I think that this is, since I don't know who's coming in next, I don't know if it's a firm, I don't know if it's individual. We haven't gone out for a hiring process. We haven't decided if it's one way or the other, and we certainly haven't negotiated. It's hard to tell. I think that we will probably never get the value of what we have right now. I think we've gotten more services than ever for as little cost as ever. I don't think we're ever going to get that again. For example, Mike has extensive housing background experience. There's very few lawyers who have that in-house, so when we go in the future, we might say, as we've done in previous years, say that we're just not going to have some of those services. I mean, Mike is providing legal services to the city that we've never had before, so I think it's going to be up to the mayor to negotiate the best deal possible. But I can tell you that it's going to be very, very difficult to replace. This will be a major, major challenge for anyone starting very soon.
I do not think, Mr. President, I do not think it will be easy to retain counsel after January for the $91,000 for 37 years' experience. I think it's going to be hard, and one of the things John and I have initiated, thinking about what does the future hold. I've had discussion with with the mayor, certainly, to try to figure out what's the best way to transition and what kind of project what's the best law department for the city.
I'm just bringing out that there are concerns here that there will be transition and change, and whether we're underfunded or overfunded in where we stand. Councilor Caddy.
Just want to make sure I'm reading this properly. Under legal costs and expenses, the projected budget is 5,000? Right. And I heard Councilor Di Natale say that we haven't come even close to that in the last 6 years. Could you move back to FY08? And I believe I'm reading 5,100. So 3 years ago, you did spend that. Am I reading this correctly?
It fluctuates depending upon the number of...
Oh, I don't need an explanation why. All I'm asking you is, 3 years ago, it was $5,100 was
Yes.
spent. Okay, so in the last 6 years, you have spent that much. Thank you.
Councilor Reynolds.
No, you covered it. Thank you.
Councilor Di Natale.
Let me clarify. FY06, $0. FY07, $0. FY08, $5,000. FY9, $1,100. FY10, $500. FY11, $1,100. 1 year out of the last 7, we've hit that number. I'm telling you, if I'm going to get pushback for $3,000 on a cut, it's not even a percent of the budget. We're going to be here for a long time this summer. I'm sorry. If the public sees this budget and they look at this, they're going to look at these accounts and go, oh, they really need that. Why do they say that to themselves? Because every year we're told how this year is worse than the next. If a budget, if you have a department that says that they don't have enough, then put it where it belongs. For all I care, put that $3,000 somewhere else. I know at the end of the year, we're going to have transfers, we're going to have, it all might come out in the wash. To me, this is about transparency here, okay? It doesn't belong there. And I don't care if it's $3,000. It adds up after a while, because this is all over the place. We're going to hear this, every department head's going to say, don't do it. In Mr. Ciotta's case, it's a little bit of an anomaly, because last year this year he's going to be spending, his budget's $408,000, and the 11 budget's $267. What Councilor Salamito said is correct. You can use a flip side argument on what I said earlier about the FY11 projected numbers. Those are inflated to make 12 look better than it really is. And there are going to be budgets we see coming up that don't even come close to spending what they're given every year. And then, oh, look at free cash. Yay. How'd that happen? Maybe we should take this unexpended money every year, instead of budgeting it, and put it in reserve where it belongs, and use it for whoever needs it. We don't do that in this city. We just put this money in these accounts, knowing they're not going to get spent, and there's never any reserve other than the snow and ice budget. I can't stand that practice. Leominster doesn't do it. They do it the other way. They put it in reserve, because it adds transparency to this process. It tells the taxpayers what is really going to be needed. Maybe they'll need $5,000 this year, I don't know, but the last 3 years, they haven't even come within half of that number. Thank you.
Any other questions for the law department? Mr. Ciota, Mr. Barrett, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilors, thank you.
Counselor Caddy.
I didn't mean to strike a nerve with Council Di Natale, but he did say they didn't spend anything like that in the last 6 years. And I looked down and I saw the figure 3 years ago, $5,000. I wanted to clarify it, that's all it was. Please don't take an insult, but I'm sure he said we didn't spend that in the last 6 years. That's all that was about.
Thank you, Counselor. Moving forward, Mayor, page 14. Mayor Personal Services. Mayor, $58,308. Assistant to the Mayor, $46,197. Clerical, $42,439. Total of $146,944. Mayor expenses, $2,800. Total, $149,744. Counselor Conry.
Yes, looking at the mayor's salary, a drop of $1,775, it's down 3%. Is this not set by ordinance, and can this be put in to the budget this way? I thought the mayor's salary was set by ordinance.
Yes, it is, but I think there's an ordinance or a petition that is filed annually by the city clerk that may be in committee. However, if the ordinance says...
Just to clarify, that has not been in committee yet. It hasn't
Okay.
come before the council.
But the mayor would have to be paid according to the ordinance.
That's what I thought. The mayor may think this is a noble idea, but, you know, we have to do what the ordinance says. Thank you.
Counselor Reynolds.
Just a comment on these figures, the mayor receiving, will use the $60,000 figure. And the assistant to the mayor, $46,000, and the clerical, $42,000. It just seems like quite an imbalance there, that those that help the mayor receive nearly what she receives. Just a comment I want to make. And if I may make another comment, from the dynamics of tonight, I am gaining a new mindset. The mayor said, and we know, but sometimes we seem to forget, we can slash this budget. It's one attitude is that they're asking us for this money, but we can just go back and say, but we're only going to give you so much money. And I think that the idea that the previous council who spoke is excellent, to set aside monies in another form, and if they need to be called on, they'd be available. Just a comment as we go along.
Counselor Joseph.
As it comes every year, we always have the ability to remove money from the budget, but we don't have a say as to where that money is going to come from. If we would say we reduce the assistant to the mayor's salary by $46,000 and eliminate that position...
Is that in the form of a motion?
No. The mayor can choose to reduce her overall budget by $46,000 by taking out a firefighter. You know, she can reduce the budget in other ways, that not in what we had anticipated. So even though we make recommendations to reduce a budget, or we make a recommendation to reduce a budget by $3,000 and put it into an overlay or another account, that doesn't mean that would have to be the mayor's prerogative at the end. She could just take that $3,000 out or put it someplace else, so we can remove money, but we can't say where it's actually going to be removed from eventually.
Counselor Di Natale.
Councilor Joseph is absolutely right. But my position has always been, let's give the mayor that opportunity. She hears our comments every meeting. She hears what our priorities are. If we don't make an effort to cut some of this money and give her that opportunity, to make that decision. I can live with that, that we at least gave her the opportunity to make the decision. If we don't cut anything, we don't give her the opportunity. And I know the mayor has heard us loud and clear on many items, and, to win support of the council, I have suggested, number one, that maybe it should just be put to reserve, just so it's not utilized to the fullest. Put some in reserve, maybe supplant another budget, if you will. I'm well aware that the mayor has the final say on where the money can go to. I would like to give her that option. We don't cut anything, she doesn't have that option, and it stands the way it is, and it gets locked in until we get an appropriation change. I just wanted to say about the mayor's salary that Councilor Reynolds is correct in terms of clerical, assistant to the mayor. It's very close to what the mayor makes. We all know that the mayor's salary in the city of Fitchburg is a joke. The mayor presented us with figures that said that the mayor of Fitchburg and Leominster are probably the lowest paid mayors in the state of a comparable sized city in budget. It's awful. It's a terrible salary. To manage a $115 million entity at $58,000, if that's what the mayor would want to have her salary at, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Not the mayor wanting it to be like that, but the fact that it's that low to begin with. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, councilors.